Listen and heed the word of the Lord. Proverbs 12:17 through 22. An honest witness tells the truth, but a false witness tells lies. The words of the reckless pierce like swords, but the tongue of the wise bring healing. Truthful lips endure forever, but a lying tongue lasts only a moment. Deceit in the hearts of those who plot evil, but those who promote peace have joy. No harm overtakes the righteous, but the wicked will have their fill of trouble. The Lord detests lying lips, but he delights in people who are trustworthy. Word of the Lord.
Keep an eye on Warren there. Make sure you can get up here and beat me to the mic. Let's stand, take a few minutes, greet somebody behind you, in front of you, around you, or across the aisle from you, and we'll start in just a moment. Okay. Should we go ahead and we'll take off again? I'm glad you got up and talked. If everybody sat there in silence and anger, we'd have had to shift the sermon to something else. Warren's already, I've got to cut a page out of it just to make sure we're out of here on time. I'm going to see if I can get one more in, Warren, before we're done. I don't know. I'm going to try. The Ten Commandments. We're back at them again. We'll do them one more week next week. But they've opened up our eyes to several areas of our life, have they not? These commandments that have been around for a long time. This number one, follow the one God. Then this word worship, only worship this one God. Identity. Use His name very, very carefully. His name is who He is. You don't separate the two. Remember, resting and remembering, creating that one time, that spot in the week where we rest because our body needs it, and remembering because our lives, our minds, our bodies need it. Obey. Show others as worthy, especially parents. Number 6, valued. Value people like heaven does. See people with the same eyes that heaven does. The single word, pure. Your thoughts matter to God as much as your actions. It's not just what's done, it's that thought process that happens long before the action was ever completed. And last week we talked about adequate. Trusting God, not yourself, to give you what you need. That one word, adequate. So as we start winding down our time with the Ten Commandments, we come to the ninth word. The ninth word is truth. Truth. Don't lie. Exodus 20, verse 16. A little bit longer than what some of them have been here lately. Exodus 20:16, you shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. And truth, it raises a question. The question is, did I tell it? Did I tell the truth? And note that this command by itself has the idea of community built into it. Hear it again. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. Life is not a solo sport, and this commandment recognizes that. It recognizes that we're living in community. We're with other people. That's what it's speaking of. The time in the desert has taught this community, those who had listened to Moses, those who had followed him out of Egypt, they've learned reliance on God. They've learned reliance on each other. Again, this idea of community. Those messages they needed to learn where they came from, where they had been in Egypt, they'd worked for another. Well, now they're out here on their own, in a good way, but the fiber of their society had to be honesty with each other. It had to be honesty with God if they had any chance of surviving. Again, think about where they are. Think about the circumstances that they've left under. Honesty has to be a part of what's going on, both across and also up and down. Think about it. Think about it this way. Somebody saying, would you help my wife milk the animals in the morning? She's not feeling well. Somebody else saying, did you find any water when you went over that rise? Dishonesty would undermine their relationships. It would pollute their homes if there wasn't honesty. Will you watch my sheep and I'll go gather the firewood? Maybe tomorrow we can switch. Yeah, I would consider a trade of livestock. Is there anything wrong with yours? Dishonesty. It would contaminate their business, and it would really warp their courts. God, here's the animal for the sacrifice. There's nothing wrong with it, just like you asked. Dishonesty. It would corrupt their worship. It would corrupt their lives. Every aspect of it. Fortunately, we've moved past that in the last 4,000 years, have we not? You can say whatever you want. What matters is what you sign your name to. You can say that the deal is complete, but it's really not because you can't take that to court. What we need is a document and put your name to it, and then we're going to see what's above it. That's what matters. Not really what you say. What you sign is what matters. And we don't lie, we fudge the truth, whatever that means. Her name's Dr. Lisa Firestone. She wrote about what she calls shades of truth, the many ways we lie. One of the ways she listed was we control a response. You don't give all of the details because, well, they didn't ask for that information. They didn't ask, I didn't share, I didn't really lie. Another way she said is lying by omission. And I'll just quote what she had. Have you ever complained to someone that you aren't losing weight without mentioning the grande frappuccino that you downed as an afternoon snack? Ouch. She also talks about exaggerations. You weren't dishonest, you just exaggerated a little bit. The fish got a little bit longer, the temperature got a little bit hotter or colder, the hill got a little steeper, as the story was told. She also talks about self-protection. She says sometimes people are coached by an inner critic, and therefore the story, the facts are nuanced a little bit because the inner critic says, watch out for yourself. Last, she talks about gossip, or as she termed it, covert communication. A lie? You don't know, you're just passing along what you heard. Well, you may not be totally honest, but most would just consider something like these that I've listed a little white lie, what we would call just a little white lie. But to God, size and color don't matter. It doesn't matter. Size and color are not the problem. In God's eyes, honesty is the problem. Not telling the truth is the problem. So how serious did God consider truth-telling to be with those people that are heading out of Egypt and they're on their way to the Promised Land? How big of a deal is it to them? They're the ones hearing this commandment, so how big a deal is it really? Deuteronomy 19, if you want to read along with me. Deuteronomy 19. Deuteronomy 19, we'll go to verse 16. See how big a deal truth-telling is before we assert any sizes or colors to it. Deuteronomy 19:16. If a malicious witness takes the stand to accuse someone of a crime, the two people involved in the dispute must stand in the presence of the Lord before the priests and the judges who are in office at the time. The judges must make a thorough investigation, and if the witness proves to be a liar, giving false testimony against a fellow Israelite, then do to the false witness as that witness intended to do to the other party. You must purge the evil from among you. Wow. Do to the false witness as that witness intended to do to the other party. That would have communicated a pretty good message what God thought of lying. And you must purge the evil from among you. Lying is a disease that exists in a community of people. It can be there, and it has to be stopped just like any other disease has to be stopped. Truth-telling actually does still matter in some part of our nation. Even this week, there were some Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg testified before Congress this week. How many people knew that? Yeah, isn't that funny? What we know. It's funny what we know. So he's in front of Congress for a couple of different days, and there were people that questioned, well, did he have to really tell the truth? And you know why they questioned it? Because he didn't give an oath before he started giving his testimony, or before he started answering his questions. There was no oath. So Senate spokespeople were asked about it, and some reporters dug into it as well. Jeremy, I thought of you as I looked up some of this. Is this right? And it was. Federal law prohibits lying, even without being under oath. Federal law prohibits lying to the executive, judicial, or legislative parts of the government. So oath or no oath, you don't lie to Congress. So it's good. At least in some part of our world, in some part of our government, truth-telling matters. It even matters when you're testifying before Congress. But are the courts the only place where telling the truth matters? Well, the community of ancient Israel would tell you it matters everywhere. It matters in everything. But what about that community 2,000 years down the road from them? Well, that's about the time of Jesus. When we come up to Jesus' time, is truth-telling matter then? Would truth-telling be as important as in this time before? Or would it be like in our time where we condemn it, but we freely participate in it? We'll talk about that in a little bit. We've seen that Jesus had great respect for the law. Jesus had the utmost respect for the law, and specifically the Ten Commandments. It comes up a lot. Matthew chapter 5. Let's see what he has to say about lying. He's had input on all of the commands. It doesn't change with this one. Matthew chapter 5. Matthew chapter 5, and when you get there, verse 33. Matthew 5:33. Did it still matter, or had it kind of lessened? Let's see what Jesus does with it. Matthew 5:33. Again, you've heard that it was said to the people long ago, do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the vows you have made. But I tell you, do not swear an oath at all, either by heaven, for it's God's throne, or by the earth, for it's his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it's the city of the great king. And don't swear by your head, for you cannot even make one hair white or black. Apparently, it sounds like truth-telling is still a problem in Jesus' time. To make sure someone knew you were being honest, from what we read here, you'd add something like, I swear by heaven it's true. Or you'd say, I swear by the great city of Jerusalem that what I'm telling you is the way it is. It's much like we might do today. We might, where it came from, I don't know. I swear on my dead mother's grave, as if that really brings it in. Or I'd put my hand on the Bible and swear to that. It kind of goes back again to our ideas of courts and how that works. And this is what Jesus is saying. So how do the Ten Commandments come into this then? Well, we'll read just a little bit more. Verse 37. Jesus said, all you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. All you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. In one word, truth. Truth. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. You should not lie about your neighbor. You should not lie to your neighbor. No crossed fingers. No omitted details. Just your word. The truth. In all honesty. When you say you'll do something, do it. When you say something is done, it's done to the best of your ability. It's the truth. Because you're a person of truth. When you say you don't know, you really don't know. If you say you'll be there at 6 o'clock, you'll be there at 6 o'clock. If you say I'll see you right after lunch, you're there right after lunch because you're a person of truth. When the quitting time is 4 o'clock or the sign says no turn on red, you follow what's been asked because you're a person of truth. For your friends, for your children, for your parents, for the waiter, for the waitress, even if they're in your church building, you're a person of truth. Because before God, you want to be a person of truth. That's what that commandment, that's what that word is about. But what about those times when you can't tell the truth? Those times when it can't be done. I mean, let's recognize that happens. Like when you have a birthday gift hidden. What about that? Then what do we do? What about when you have the surprise party planned? So what's going on? Why do I need to be home at 6 o'clock at night? Because, and whatever story you can give. What about those times when you can't tell the truth? Well, sadly, we use the same rules and other times that we want to apply at those times with the hidden gift or the surprise birthday party, and we use that with irresponsible driving, or we use it with unethical work habits, or we use it to keep the fires of gossip burning. But I'm going to suggest what I heard in a sermon about lying. It stuck with me. I want to pass it along. I hope you find it helpful. The preacher explained that there were surprises and there are secrets. They both call for evading the truth. They both call with not being upfront about things. But how do you know the difference between the two? Surprises. Jot this down if you think it'll help you. Surprises. Someone will know very shortly. A surprise someone will know very shortly. And it's fun and it's good. Surprises. Someone will know very shortly, it's fun and it's good. Again, think birthday parties, birthday gifts, think Christmas gifts and they're hidden in the house or what just showed up out front and what's in the box. They're going to know very shortly, it's fun and it's good. Secrets? No one else is supposed to know. It's painful and it's bad. Example? Think of addictions. They're not surprises. Think of abuse. It's not good. Surprises and secrets. Surprises, someone will know very shortly, it's good and it's fun. Secrets, nobody's supposed to know. It's bad and it's painful. Surprises and secrets. We need to know the difference. I'll spend a moment with another dilemma, though, when it comes to this commandment. What about lying, though, that involves God's laws and a nation's laws? Maybe not so much of a concern for us, but much more a concern for us than it was 2 or 3 years ago. What about when lying involves this clash of laws? Example is in Exodus 1. If you want to turn there, I'll read it to you. In Exodus chapter 1, we have these midwives, and then we have these Israelite babies, and we've got a dilemma. They have a dilemma. We get to read about it and learn from it. But what about when the law of the land asks you to do something that's contrary to God's ways? Then what do you do? When it looks like there may have to be some lies that are told to follow God. Exodus chapter 1, we'll start reading in verse 15. Exodus 1, verse 15. The king of Egypt is how this verse starts. The king of Egypt. He said to the Hebrew midwives, whose names were Shiphrah and Puah, when you're helping the Hebrew women during childbirth on the delivery stool, if you see that the baby is a boy, kill him. But if it is a girl, let her live. You'll have to look at the backstory, those verses leading up to it, and what's going on there. Verse 17, the midwives, however, feared God and did not do what the king of Egypt had told them to do. They let the boys live. And then the king of Egypt summoned the midwives and asked them, why have you done this? Why have you let the boys live? The midwives answered, Pharaoh, Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women. They are vigorous and they give birth before the midwives arrive. What about the 9th commandment then? If we think about it, this is before the 10 commandments, but God's still a God of truth. It's just revealed. He just lays out very clearly who he is and what he expects of his people. But what about not lying to the king? And then to keep reading, if you keep reading a little bit further, God rewards the midwives. Not only did they lie, but the applause of heaven was heard. Professor Ahad said this about Exodus 1. I've just kept track of it over the years. We aren't obligated to tell the truth to the devil. It's a tool God has given us to fight the devil. The midwives lied out of fear of God. Hear that again. We aren't obligated to tell the truth to the devil. It's a tool God has given us to fight the devil. The midwives lied out of fear of God. Sounds kind of murky there, doesn't it, though? Like a kind of slippery slope. But there's some truth to that. And that's why missionaries to other countries can get Bibles across borders in places where the Bible should not be in the government's eyes. And that's why Christians can continue to live in places where if it's found out what they believe and that they follow Jesus, they'll be killed. They know God's rule is not to lie, but they also know it's God's rules to make sure that other people know about him. The surprise is Jesus is coming soon, and it's good. Jesus is not a secret. One source for my daily prayer time is Release International. It's prayers for the persecuted church, for persecuted Christians wherever they are in the world. This past Thursday's entry, this is perfect. I'm going to share this. It says, pray that God will make invisible those brave Christians who risk everything to enter North Korea, spread the gospel, and support the underground church. There's no way they're getting across the border by telling the truth. They're going to have to come up with something else. That king in that place is legislating something that those missionaries and that underground church cannot and will not abide by. Truth-telling means sometimes we have to be quiet. And sometimes truth-telling means we have to speak up. But in your words or in your silence, this commandment reminds us, tell the truth. May honesty be woven into every action that you have. Jesus has already taught us about our thoughts. Long before the action is completed or the word is spoken or the details are omitted, it happened in our thoughts first. May truth be in every word. May it be in every deal we make. May it be in every response that we have. And this is a commandment you've kept. just like all the other ones. You've said what was true even though it cost you something. You knew that by being honest, it was going to cost you something at work, at home, in that exchange, but you spoke the truth anyway because it was the right thing to do. Good job. And you didn't say what everyone else was saying. Instead, you said the truth. You spoke up maybe when nobody else would because the truth needed to be heard. You did what this 9th commandment's all about. You didn't tell the officer you didn't know the speed. You shared the truth because you're a person of truth. And you know that this commandment is more than a do or a don't. You know that this commandment, all the other ones, they're life. They're life. And you know that they're not old, they're actually quite timeless. We've covered 4,000 plus years of time and we find out they're still relevant today. And you also know that it's a word for your life today. So once again, the Word of God speaks in a short little verse. And then it asks us quietly, will you listen? Will you listen? And then to think, because of what Jesus did, we can be in the presence of this God who has always been totally honest with us. What a God. Next week, the last word. Yeah, we started this in January. It's all right. We're getting there. One more. Next week, the last word. And after you've heard all 10, will you be? After you've heard all 10, will you be? And we'll talk about that a little bit more next time. We're going to sing together. I want you to think about your interactions, your relationships, what you do at work, our driving, what we think about, what we purchase, what we do when we return something. Are we people of truth? Are we people of truth? Let's stand and sing together.